Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our interview today. It's with Jessica Hardin, who is an organizing coach. So hello, Jessica. Thank you for joining
Hey,
us.
yes, I'm happy to be here.
I wanted to talk to Jessica because I think a lot of people struggle with staying organized. And I know for myself, when my outer world is disorganized, my inner world feels disorganized too. So for me personally, that's why I feel passionate about organizing, but sometimes even I have no idea what the best way to do that is. So that's why I'm really excited to talk to Jessica today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about what you do.
For sure, yeah. I'm Jessica, and I'm a wife, pizza lover, and organizing coach for my brand, Three Lime Pines. And so my background is in commercial interior design in the architecture field. And so that's kind of where my background and approach is coming from in relation to organizing. And between experimenting in my own space and designing spaces professionally, I have around 13 years of hands-on experience with organizing and experimenting with creating time efficiencies and productivity and things like that. So very
Awesome.
excited to be sharing with you guys today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us, in your opinion, why you think it's so, I kind of, I know why I feel like it's important to be organized. I'd love to hear from your perspective. Do you kind of see the same thing with your clients and customers, that it makes a difference in other things other than just their space?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. So I think as humans in general, we just crave order, and whether you're naturally a organized person or not, we all want that and desire that. And even if you weren't taught how to organize, the good thing is that it's something that can be taught. So it's something that you can learn. And we're all in a little bit different places on the journey. But I think one of the big things that I've learned and that I try to teach my
Alexa,
clients is
stop.
oh, is to is to just give yourself some grace when it comes to expectations in regards to organizing, and just know that you can learn and it takes time, and that's okay. And taking it one step at a time. And learning in little bits, and also just giving yourself grace for the season of life you're in. Some seasons are way messier than others, and just knowing that that's okay, and taking it in bite-sized steps for where you're at. Yeah, being organized and tidy can definitely help with reducing stress. It can help with, yeah, yeah, reducing stress.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that I've learned is that at the core of being tidy and organized is having healthy habits and
Mm.
also healthy boundaries.
Mm.
So that's kind of what I have found or deducted that makes up being organized.
Ooh, I like that. So when you talk about healthy boundaries, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think whether it's in your home or whether it's in your schedule is having yeah, having rules, I guess, or I'm trying to think of another way to say it.
Just even on your time or on what you're willing to
Exactly.
kind of allow.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that makes
Yes.
sense.
So like in your home, for instance, is like, do you have a boundary of where people put things?
Gotcha. Yes.
Do you have a boundary of, like, for instance, your kids throwing laundry all over your house? That would probably be a boundary. You'd be like, hey, you're not throwing laundry in the living room.
Yeah. Yeah.
It goes in the laundry room.
Yeah.
And so creating some of those boundaries, I think of boundaries almost like the like bowling lane bumpers,
Yeah.
kind of guiding you through. And yeah, just giving you a sense of order and something to go off of.
Yep.
So establishing some of those in place can be very helpful in helping you stay organized.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Ton of sense. Yes. Like for me, my mail comes in the door and it doesn't go anywhere than my like one little counter. And then I figure out right where I'm going to put it and it doesn't get spread out. And yes, I get that.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you establish some of those boundaries, it allows you to also communicate those to other people around the house as well.
Yep.
And I know like if people are living with roommates or something like that, that can be a little bit more challenging than family members maybe that you have a little bit more say over.
Right.
But yeah, establishing some of those can help with relationships too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay. So we talked about how one of the biggest areas people struggle with, and really that probably because we spend a ton of time in there, is our kitchen. And probably if you were to ask probably any woman, I was going to say any mom, but I don't even think it has to be a mom. Just any woman, like what area, like would you love to have organized all the time? It would probably be the kitchen. So, that's what we're going to kind of focus on today is the kitchen. So we want to know some of your magic kitchen tips. Like how do we keep it organized? Are we weeding a whole bunch of stuff out? Is it just about smart placement of items? Like we want to know all the things.
So a little bit of both. Okay. So I'll just give some background on kind of where I'm coming from with kitchen experience. So I've moved about 4 times in the last 3 years. And so I've had the opportunity to experiment with different kitchens and layouts and things like that. So, and when you move, it's interesting. The kitchen almost always takes the longest to pack up and the longest to unpack.
Yeah.
And so I had 2 organizing tips and then 2 habit tips around the kitchen that I wanted to share today. So organizing tip 1 would be use your vertical space in the kitchen. So there is definitely an element of organizing where you want to get rid of stuff first before you organize, because you don't want to be organizing things that are broken, that you don't use anymore, or that are maybe even just one-time use items or things like that, which we'll chat about a little bit later. But using the vertical space in your kitchen, a lot of kitchens often do have a fair amount of vertical space, whether it's within inside of your cabinets, having shelves that move up and down. So yeah, being able to adjust the shelves to make the best use of the space within the cabinets, and then the vertical space like above your cabinets, looking at could you get some baskets for up there and have maybe more of a deep storage type of product, or having being able to use that vertical space in your kitchen.
Yeah. Okay.
Or even like in the kitchen that I have right now. So we're renting still, and I have a shelf in the kitchen that adds extra storage to the kitchen because there's not much where I'm renting right now. Yeah. So another tip would be to organize your food by categories. So this is, more food related than like your dishes and stuff, but food is a big part of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And having a efficient layout as it relates to where your food is located can can be huge in cooking efficiently or even wanting to cook. If your kitchen is a mess and you're having to run like, miles across your kitchen every time you have to cook, it may be pretty demotivating. Yeah. So one interesting way that I found to organize food is to organize by your favorite recipes. So this applies to, not all of your food, but there's kind of one or different layers. Okay. So organizing by category or organizing by recipe. So my husband and I make tacos and chocolate chip cookies quite a bit. And so we have kind of this spot in our kitchen that has everything for tacos and everything for chocolate chip cookies. Yep. All in one spot. And then kind of a sub-layer under that, I've organized the rest of our food that doesn't fall into those recipe categories by type. So like all of our beans are together. We have all the rice together. And just organizing by dry food and canned food and then like snack food. So that you have these different categories through your kitchen to organize that way.
Yeah. Now, does it matter? Like, obviously, I would imagine you would recommend most food goes in the pantry. Would there ever be a time where you wouldn't put food in your pantry and you put it like in your cabinets, or you'd say, nope, keep it in your pantry?
Yeah. So I would say, as much as possible. I guess it depends on your kitchen layout. Everybody's a little bit different, but having the food that you would use in a certain area of your kitchen as close to that area as possible. Okay. So spices, you're going to mostly be using those by the stove probably. So having them near the stove. Yep. Things like, I would say probably what you would put in your pantry is things like rice and canned food and things that are fairly easy to take out and put on the counter and then put back. Yep. Or things that are not as frequently used would go in the pantry, and then of course all your produce in the refrigerator. Yep.
Okay. What about like bigger items? That was one of the questions, like the one-time use items. I'm even thinking stuff like my food processor. Like maybe I take that thing out once a year. Part of me is like, maybe I should just get rid of it and throw that recipe away, right?
Yes.
Like, or I think one of the big things people struggle with is like the Tupperware, and not necessarily that brand, but I'm saying like the containers with all the lids. Like that's my biggest question. What's the best way to store that kind of stuff?
Yes. So one-time use items. So I had a couple different things that I jotted down in regards to that, because I wasn't quite sure what people were thinking of for that question. So I would say if you have a food processor and you're only using it once a year, the first question I would probably ask is how can you use it more? Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's time to pass it on and just see if a friend has one that you can borrow when you need it once a year. Yeah. Rather than storing it in your house where you're not using it very often. Yep. I think that's kind of been a rule that I keep with appliances, and then I also encourage my clients and other people to kind of keep that rule too, is if you're only using it once a year, then it's probably not worth keeping it around. And there's usually ways, or other people, friends, family, neighbors, yeah, who you can borrow something from if you need it.
Yep.
And you may find that you never miss it.
Right? Exactly. And then you don't feel guilty for not using it.
Exactly. And then you can use that space for other things that you are actually going to use throughout the year. So the other or I guess the other thing that you were asking about was Tupperware and such. Yeah, so that one, I often organize by size, so nesting them as much as possible, and then separating the lids and the actual Tupperware dishes, so that your lids are all organized vertically. So if you have a drawer that allows you to do that, that's the easiest way, because then you can flip through them kind of like a file cabinet. Yeah, so I would say that would be the easiest way, but I know a lot of us have way too much Tupperware most of the time. And so sorting through and getting rid of the Tupperware that's getting worn out would be the first step for sure.
Yeah.
So just paring down to the ones that you find yourself digging for all the time.
Yep.
And getting rid of the ones that are just in the way.
Yep. No, that's such a good point with anything, right? Yes. Tear down.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. And two, for the people who are here, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the comments, and I'll be watching those as well. Okay, so you said 2 organizing tips. So use your vertical space for your food, organize it by categories.
Yes.
I love that. And then you said you had some habits. Habits? Is that what you call them? Okay.
Yeah, so two habits that that I encourage people to develop for your kitchen specifically. Okay. So one of them being clean up dishes as you cook. So rather than waiting until dinner is done and you come back into the kitchen to a pile of dishes, cleaning up things like cutting boards and knives and pans that you've transferred food to other pans. So cleaning up as you go will make a lot of the stress in the kitchen way lower. And it also allows you to keep a cleaner kitchen, which feels more organized, and it just allows you to have a less stressful space there.
And makes dinner cleanup much faster, right?
Oh, yes.
At the end.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I love that.
Yes, and then tip 2 is don't leave empty-handed. So whether it's when you're cooking or not, whenever you go into the kitchen and there's something out of place, take that with you to the correct location or put it away or things like that. Like, for example, my husband and I, we have a two-bay sink, and we dry dishes in one side of the sink. So we'll let them sit there and dry. So I don't like drying dishes, so I let them sit there until they're dry. So whenever I go in the kitchen, I will start putting away some of those dishes. So even if I'm just going in there for a glass of water, I will put some dishes away while I'm there.
Yep, that makes sense. I see Sarah in the comments. She said, we use the kitchen all day long because we don't eat out much, and I always feel like we have dirty dishes. Oh, I can relate to that so much, especially when it's summertime and your kids are home, because I feel like they eat every breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner, and it's like you start all over. And I'm the same way. I hate drying dishes, but what I feel like happens is then I have a pile of dishes that are always drying. And sometimes I'm like, maybe I just need to suck it up and dry the dang dishes so they're not. But some of them you can't because, the crevices on a lid or something that literally needs to air dry. But yeah, I feel you on that, Sarah. I feel like I have dishes in my kitchen all the time, and we clean them right away. I never have dirty dishes in my sink, but it's like there's always feels like there's stuff out, I haven't quite figured the solution to that one out. Maybe I'll build a wall with everything behind.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
Some of it that I encourage too is how can you get your kids involved in developing some of those habits of putting things away whenever they go into the kitchen too. So obviously the more people that you have in the house, the more the load can potentially be shared, unless your kids are young. Then it's a little bit more challenging. But if they're if they're young enough to, to not be able to help yet, then they're probably also not really getting their own dishes out yet.
Right. Right. And from a really young age too, they can, if nothing else, they can at least clean up after themselves, even if it's just bringing the dish to the sink. And then as they get older, just rinsing it off and stick it in the dishwasher. I feel like they can do that when they're pretty young. I still don't trust them to like clean things thoroughly that need to be hand washed. So I kind of leave that. Yeah. Okay. In terms of specific locations in the kitchen to store things that'll make everything flow and feel better, what kind of tips do you have for us on that?
Yes. So there are a few, even though every kitchen is a little bit different, there are a few kind of universal principles across the board.
Okay.
So kitchens are designed with this thing called a work triangle in them. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's basically this triangle between the sink, the stove, and the refrigerator. And so that triangle is the basically efficiency of the kitchen, where they're usually in closer proximity. And so my recommendation is to organize and put things that are frequently used very close to that triangle and to where they are going to be used. So things like having your Tupperware in an efficient place, for instance, like probably most of the time you're going to be putting food into it and then putting the food in the refrigerator. So can your Tupperware be close to your refrigerator so that your flow from the stove over toward the refrigerator is just kind of naturally there, and you don't have to go all the way across the kitchen to get Tupperware and then all the way back to put the food in the Tupperware and then put it in the fridge. And things like spices and oil and having those types of items near the stove, where maybe even while you're cooking, you're going to need to pull those out.
Yeah.
So creating those efficiencies within the work triangle there, and knowing which ingredients are the ones that you're pulling out most often. And even if you don't know right now, some of it is becoming aware of what you do use most often and then adjusting as you go. So it's not about, oh, I'm not doing this right now and I'm a bad person because of it, but it's experimenting and adjusting as you go. And my husband and I do most of our cooking at home as well, because we have dietary restrictions and stuff, or allergies. So it is just finding those efficiencies that allow you to take the least amount of steps.
Yeah.
So you can kind of make a game out of it too. Is like, how can I take the least amount of steps in my kitchen to get what I need?
Yeah. And really, I mean, that's I never heard it explained like that, but yeah, you have that triangle in your kitchen, and to keep all those things that you use on a regular basis within that space makes a ton of sense. And it's really just going to depend on, what you use regularly, what you use often, and put in a space that you can get to. Yeah. Like common sense, but that made a lot of sense to say it like that, to put it in that triangle. I think that's awesome. Okay, so tell us, what else do you have to share with us? Anything more you wanted to say or remind us of, or that was pretty much all of it?
Yeah, I think giving yourself grace and being willing to learn and experiment is a huge part of organizing. Yes. That's been a huge part of my journey too, is just being willing to try things and be okay if it doesn't work, and know that I can adjust it, I can move it. It's my home. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time out. So exactly. I appreciate this, because I think I mentioned to you that we're getting ready to move into a new home, and I've lived here for 12 years, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? But yes, it doesn't have to be right on the first time out. You got exactly. Yes.
Okay, well, tell us then what kind of like services you offer to people, and then kind of how they can connect with you if they want some more information.
Yes, for sure. So they can find me on Instagram at Three Lime Pines and also on the blog at threelimepines.com. And as far as services go, I'm currently in the process of launching a beta phase for a membership site on home and life organizing.
Mm.
And so if people would like to jump on the wait list for that, they can go to threelimepines.com/beta.
Okay. Oh gosh, that sounds awesome. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
so there will be coaching and education and community around home and life organizing there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Yes,
thank you
thank
for
you for having
everyone.
me.
Yes, of course. Thank you everyone who's here. And we will talk to you all soon. So thank you for joining.